Good morning everybody, this is Lara from Pure Elliott Wave with your Monday to Friday Bitcoin, Ethereum and XRP. Happy Monday everybody. Let's have a quick look at last week, and on Bitcoin I want to have a look and just see how extreme can ADX and RSI get at the weekly time frame when this market has a strong bullish run. Last week, Bitcoin has had an upward week, a higher low. Volume has slightly increased beyond the prior upward week, so there is still support from volume pushing price higher, although momentum and range is starting to wane from a few weeks ago when it had a strong upward movement following a breakout of this consolidation. So we're having another little consolidation again. Resistance above identified at the weekly time frame, 41,100. Support has been holding at 35,000. The upward trend is indicated, and it's a long way from becoming extreme. RSI is overbought, but it can get much more deeply overbought and remain there for a long time. Let's see how extreme RSI and ADX can get. So approaching the all-time high in November 2021, just under 69,000. Previously, ADX had reached very extreme, and it got there in April 2021, and yet the high was reached several months later in November. RSI reached very deeply overbought and exhibited multiple bearish divergence at the all-time high in November 2021. So just because RSI reaches into extreme territory doesn't mean the upward trend has to end. It can continue for months and continue for quite a long distance. Prices here, as RSI reached into overbought, were about 13,500 and the all-time high just under 69,000. Having a look at the very important high in December 2017, RSI reached overbought first in November 2015, 2 years before the final high. The closing price here, $385, and yet the high in December 2017, just over 19,800. So price can travel many multiples and continue for years after RSI reaches overbought. RSI reached deeply overbought in June 2016. The closing price here, $761. ADX tells us there's a very extreme trend. RSI reached overbought and exhibited single bearish divergence in February 2017, but the high wasn't found until December. The closing price here in February, 1,264, and yet the high in December, 19,870. So just because ADX tells us the trend is very extreme and RSI is deeply overbought and exhibits divergence, even that doesn't mean that the trend has to end. RSI then reached very deeply overbought in June 2017. ADX again indicating an extreme trend. Close for price here, 2,973. So yeah, it can get really extreme relatively early on in an upward trend. Another really important high is the major peak in November 2013. That high, 1,241. RSI reached very deeply overbought in March 2013. Close for price there, just $92.19. And yet the high in November 2013, 1,241. ADX tells us the upward trend is very extreme in April 2013, where the close is 134. It can reach deeply overbought and exhibit a very extreme upward trend, and yet price has got a long way to go before that trend ends. So these two on their own are helpful to telling us when pullbacks and consolidations may arrive, but they will also be helpful in telling us when the trend is over, but they have to be used in conjunction with a full Elliott Wave count and candlestick patterns and other technical indicators. Over the weekend, Bitcoin essentially moved sideways, but we now have a couple of bearish reversal patterns, and it's coming in the context of an upward trend, so it's at a high. Here's a shooting star candlestick pattern. I calculated the length of the wick. It is more than twice the length of the body of the candlestick. That's a requirement for a shooting star. And this 1, 2, 3, these three candlestick patterns together complete an evening doji star bearish reversal pattern. So let's expect downward movement. Let's expect support to probably hold about 35,000. If that gives way, 31,000. The shooting star candlestick pattern does have some push from volume. That's pushing price higher though. The third candlestick of the bearish evening doji star pattern has a little bit of a push from volumes, so that adds a little bit of confidence or weight to that bearish reversal pattern. It's coming in the context of ADX declining after indicating a very extreme upward trend, so let's expect, at least for the short term, some pullback or consolidation following that bearish reversal pattern. It comes in the context of RSI reaching deeply overbought and exhibiting double bearish divergence, so let's expect a pullback or consolidation. Now remember what I showed you on the weekly chart though, just because ADX has told us the upward trend is very extreme, and just because RSI is overbought, it doesn't mean this upward trend has to end. Price won't always move in a straight line. It will when it's in a parabolic growth phase, but there will be normally pullbacks and consolidations along the way, and this is at the daily time frame that this trend reached very extreme. At the weekly time frame, there's a long way to go before it reaches very extreme, and even then, it doesn't mean the trend has to be over. We need a full, complete Elliott Wave count, and we need to use a range of technical indicators to indicate when this bullish run is over. It will be interrupted, and I expect it's being interrupted now. My Elliott Wave count for Ethereum remains the same. I am still expecting that it's completing a double combination for a second wave correction at minute degree. The first structure in the double is a zigzag labelled Minuet W. The double is joined by a relatively deep 3 in the opposite direction labelled X. It's a zigzag. And then Y is unfolding now as an expanded flat A, B, C, and subminuet C must subdivide as a 5-wave motive structure and is extremely likely to move at least slightly below the end of A at 1906.37 to avoid a truncation and a very rare running flat. I am expecting minute 2 may end at the log function of the 0.382 Fibonacci ratio at 1876.56, so that it moves mostly sideways and ends about the same level as W, because the purpose of the second structure in a double combination is to take up time and move price sideways. They are sideways consolidations. At the daily time frame for Ethereum, there's another shooting star candlestick. So in the context of this upward trend at highs, we have 2 bearish reversal patterns now. Actually, these 3 together also for Ethereum make an evening doji star. I should add that to the chart. So we have bearish reversal patterns at a high after some upward movement. And so today, unsurprising, we're getting some downward movement. Let's look out for support about 1880. It's most likely that's where this downward movement's going to end, but if price closes below the support, then look for next support at 1800. I'll also note the 50-day moving average crossing above the 200-day moving average, giving us a golden cross signal. This is bullish and supports the bullish Elliott Wave count. Doesn't mean that price has to continue straight on up though. Don't expect it to move in a straight line always. It will sometimes. It'll continue with a little interruption, but usually there'll be consolidations and pullbacks along the way. Today, price is moving fairly strongly lower, and so far, 10:30 in the morning, volume is already pushing price lower, so let's expect a pretty decent downward day today. ADX is still declining, telling us there's no clear trend. It's out of danger territory now, below the 45 mark. Let's see if this consolidation is time-consuming enough or pullback is deep enough to pull ADX to become below both DX lines. If it does, that'll set itself up for a really strong signal. With no clear trend, I'll revert to the model of stochastics plus support and resistance. Stochastics reached overbought, moving overall through neutral. Let's expect overall stochastics to continue down to oversold and price to continue overall down to support. The Elliott Wave count for XRP has something interesting to note today. Last week I had someone question, could this be correct? Could the third wave of the ending diagonal here for minute C have been over here and the fourth wave have been over here? That's now invalidated because the rules regarding wavelengths for an ending contracting diagonal aren't met. Also, the rules regarding the trend lines aren't met. Here, because 3 is shorter than 1, that means the diagonal must be contracting. That means 4 must be shorter than 2. But now, if 4 is over here, it's 0.063, whereas 2 was 0.0549. So 4 is now longer than 2. For a contracting diagonal, the trend lines must converge. They are not converging now, they're diverging. So this wave count would be invalid, so I'm leaving it as this. Minute wave C is expected to be over here, so an expanded flat for minor 2 is expected to be over at the low for 21st of November, and minor 3 is now expected to be underway. Let's get some labels in here for minor 3. Now I might need to move the degree of labeling within this little first wave up, down 1 degree. It could be incomplete, but I'll leave it for here now. So I'm looking for a little second wave correction. It may not move beyond the start of 1 below 0.5746. But to acknowledge that miner 2 might not be over and it could continue sideways as a double combination or double flat, although that's unusual, so the probability is low, it does exist. I won't pull the invalidation point for the daily wave count for XRP up to the end of miner 2 until we see a new high above the end of miner wave 1. And if that upward movement has strength, support from volume, an increase in range, an increase in momentum, then I won't expect it's an X or B wave, I'll expect it's the start of miner wave 3, and one of the core Elliott Wave rules will be met. 3 must move beyond the end of 1. At that point I'll bring the invalidation point up, but for now it remains down here. Miner 2 may not move beyond the start of 1 below 0.4456. Technicals on the daily chart, resistance has held at 62 cents. For a pullback now, if it reaches this low, look out for support at about the 54-55 cent range. We had a golden cross a little while ago for XRP, so overall this looks bullish. Upward movement here followed by a dark cloud cover. Pullback now has a bullish piercing pattern at the low, so this tells us that this pullback may be over and the upward trend, the larger upward trend, may have resumed. Downward movement for XRP so far at 10:30 in the morning does not have push from volume, but the session is so early it's probably going to end up stronger than the previous red candlestick and probably will have volume pushing price lower. On balance, volume's still in a neat little range here. I've just adjusted the resistance line today for better technical significance. A break above resistance or below support would provide a signal. ADX for XRP is declining. There is no clear trend. It's well out of danger territory now. Let's see if it can get below both DX lines and set itself up for a new signal. With ADX declining, indicating no clear trend, I'll revert to the model of stochastics plus support and resistance. Stochastics reached oversold, price reached support. I'll expect overall an upward swing from stochastics and price until stochastics reaches overbought and price reaches resistance. That's it from me today with your update, and I hope everyone had a lovely weekend.